empowering tomorrow and safeguarding children and youth from chemical waste and pollution. We hosted youth practitioners and different speakers and panelists that discussed the subject matter in more substantive ways and the virtual roundtables. Next slide. So right now I will start very briefly sharing with you our youth priorities, the key policy asks, and I'll stop halfway, and as I mentioned, my colleague Olga will continue and share the key messages from the policy brief. One of the main elements that we are trying to push since the open-ended working group 1.2 is asking and demanding the intergenerational equity incorporating in the future science policy panel, and to get the intergenerational equity well established in the environment governance and the multilateralism when it comes to the environment and the triple planetary crisis. We were demanding establishing a youth expert advisory group, and we already recommended it as one of the key messages of the mapping of these existing science policy interfaces and how this advisory group can be beneficial and can feed into the work of the future science policy panel. We drafted and proposed some possible avenues of engagement and ways that the youth expert advisory group can be a subcommittee of the interdisciplinary expert group, and how can a youth fellowship program also enhance the future work of the panel. Capacity building and awareness. We reiterate the importance of capacity building function and the need of enhancing the capacity for the future science policy panel work program that will make sure for the maximized benefits and outcomes of the work of the future science policy panel. I will stop here and then I will give the floor to my colleague Olga to continue on the youth priorities and then to share with us also the key messages from the policy brief. Olga.
Thank you, Asil, for this brief introduction of our intersessional work preparations and our youth priorities. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see that we drafted 10 priorities that we would like to advocate as Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP. And the core priorities for us, as well as intergenerational equity, capacity building, is conflict of interest and a flexible approach to addressing the issues of chemical space and pollution. And then we would also like to advocate for the flexible outreach mechanism and complementarity of the functions where the science policy panel does not duplicate the work of existing science policy interfaces, but complement and bridge the gaps that already exist within these science policy platforms, as well as it focuses on vulnerable communities and address different intersectionalities. If we go to the next slide, we have also thought of outlining what are their stakeholder engagement mechanisms within their existing science policy panels, and we looked into GEO, Global Environmental Outlook, we looked into International Resource Panel, EPAS, Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, as well as IPCC, Intergovernmental Platform on Climate Change. And there we look into what are the mechanisms or how they engage with stakeholders, as well as with young people. First of all, IRP, they do not have a well-established policy of engagement, and this is an area of work for us as SPMG of engaging with them and thinking together how they can enhance our collaboration, how we as young people can contribute to them. But then if we look into IPCC, GEO, and EPAS, then we can see that they all have their own engagement mechanisms and they kind of replicate each other. It would be like a fellowship program, or for GEO it would be youth-friendly language, a GEO for youth, or it would be something like providing scholarships for young people to do their PhDs on certain areas of the science policy panel. And these these mechanisms, they are already existing, and this is a good practice, but usually they are not enough, because to join the science policy panels as a early career researchers, you still have lots of demands and requirements. You need to have publications, you need to have a master's degree, you need to have like a good service list. And usually it's not the case for those people who come from marginalized communities or who have indigenous and local knowledge. And that is why we would like to advocate for the stakeholder engagement strategy of the new science policy panel to be more inclusive, to address their existing gaps of access to the platform, to knowledge, and also access to engage in the whole science policy processes. And we know that when EPAS was created in the first plenary, they launched and agreed on an open consultation process to create a stakeholder engagement mechanism with all sectors of civil society. And that's why one of our recommendations and key messages is, when this science policy is established, to create the same public process to engage young people and also scientific communities, indigenous peoples, and other sectors of civil society in co-creating the stakeholder engagement mechanism that would address the needs of the civil society. And you can find our submission by going to OEWG-3 website or by scanning the QR code. Thank you. And if we go to the next slide, we will move forward with the opening remarks.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olga. Thank you so much, Asil. So, yes, we will have some opening remarks. The order of the remarks will be a little bit different than what's on the screen. So I'll just call them out and let you know. So you're welcome to provide opening remarks, but also reflections on what Asil and Olga have just presented in terms of the intersessional work that has happened with the Children with Youth major group, as well as the youth priorities that were very briefly lined up. So to open up the opening remarks, I would like to invite Letitia Zobel, the Program Management Officer at the Civil Society Unit at the Governor Affairs Office at UNEP. So yes, thank you so much. So Letitia.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be in Geneva with all of you, and welcome. I've been impressed by your level of preparation in the intersessional working period from day one. You've been really impressing everybody. You've been extremely well prepared and have had always thought-provoking, innovative thoughts on how we should work and move between open-ended working group 1, 2, and 3, and now until today. And had very constructive also inputs to make and comments. So it's been a pleasure to work with you and accompany you, and I'm looking forward to continue this work, and been carefully listening also just now on what your ideas are in terms of engaging or rather setting up a stakeholder engagement mechanism for the science policy panel. I think they are valid, and looking forward to further discussions with you. I clearly remember how IPBS was set up and how collaborative we all were with the relevant major groups, and in particular indigenous peoples who've been partnering from day one, and really made their demands very clear on how this should look like. So I'm looking forward to work with you and continue the discussion with all other major groups in the afternoon. And yeah, this is it. And I think I'm going to hand over to my dear colleagues, right?
Yes. Yes.
So thank you, everyone, and good morning. Nice to see some of you are online, and nice to see some common faces. So I know there's continuity here. So 9 million people a year are dying from air pollution, from other chemical pollution. And it's really important, I think, that you all are here because of that. Because at the end of the day, if this panel is created with ambition and with the right level of mechanisms in place, it might just solve that. And so it's very interesting to see your priorities for engagement, because I think it's aligning very much with what we're seeing member states are converging to. And because right now in the work program process, there is a process that is being discussed still, but that is looking at how do stakeholders, including yourselves, put issues on the table. And then how does that funnel alongside all other priorities that are put forward into a prioritization process that then gets agreed by member states, but a proper objective process and a transparent process by which all those priorities come forward. Assuming member states approve that, then they get a work program. And then how that work program gets agreed upon is not that we have scientists sitting in a vacuum, isolated from stakeholders, but actually agrees with, looks at how do you co-create solutions that really work? Because it's one thing to say, oh, okay, this is a source of air pollution, do something about it. And actually the economic interests are so big across so many different sectors that nothing can be done. So actually engaging very different stakeholders from across the major groups, especially with youth, in fact, even with industry, to be at the table so that the solutions are grounded in reality. And so then comes our conflict of interest policy, and there is a draft policy again that is put on the table, but not that one that is just that, okay, you have a different space that you're engaging with, so you should be removed, but no, rather that conflict, potential conflict, is identified, recognized in a documented process, and then there are mechanisms in place for, okay, how do you ensure, validation of those findings? How do you ensure there is a really comprehensive process, but that you can still hear those views, because actually some of those views are still very critical to having real solutions on the table. So if that gets approved by member states, then we have a very good process that aligns very much along the lines that you all say, because it would allow youth to come in at the identification of issues, to help to co-create the solutions, and to have something very practical. As you know, last year, the Global Framework on Chemicals was approved with some 28 targets. The Global Plastics Treaty is under negotiation, and with any luck, by the end of this year, member states agree on an ambitious treaty. And of course, then is this process. And this process has the opportunities to actually provide member states with what is the most important of the issues that need to be addressed. I mean, from the global framework, the chemical multilateral environmental agreements, which have their own panels, but this would complement that. And then, of course, there is the whole AMR process, and we will see, where that'll land. So very excited to see all of you in this, and looking forward to the engagement. Thank you.
I think we can move the mic down the line, so that's good. So good morning, everyone. Also, my pleasure to be here with you. And again, welcome many of you to the open-ended working group process, and very happy to be welcomed in your meeting. Of course, as a secretariat, important to keep on the radar what we are here for today. You are having a consultation today on actually the documentation that's been prepared, and also how to strategize for this week. Of course, the open working group was really developed to prepare proposals for establishing a science policy panel. And I think your proposals and your kind of reflections upon them are very constructive. And I don't think we need to go back to sort of the basics. What I would like to kind of reflect upon a little bit with you is also in going forward and in discussing today, how some of your ideas can possibly land. So, I mean, I think it's very good that we have the opportunity to meet with you here today. And from some of your proposals, I would also say I will definitely take them home, because especially the stakeholder engagement element is something that is remaining vital and also going forward with the process. And it would be very good for us to hear the voices on how you see these things to be done and how to be taken forward. Of course, we have already text developed at Open Working Group 2, which is highly bracketed. That was forwarded directly to this meeting. We have new text prepared. The Secretariat was requested to do so, but in a way, it's now in the hands of the government. So in your strategizing on the topics that you have identified as priorities, I think it's very important that you find ways to engage with governments and also convey your points. And I have seen you in action in all the regional meetings. So I also, like my colleagues, I'm very impressed at how well you've been organized. I don't think there was any webinar, event, or meeting where we did not have the participation of children and youth. So now I think you're well versed to it, and therefore, you know what you want. You have prepared discussions today, and just make sure it's not only us knowing what you want. I also just want to reflect a little bit on the role of youth, because even before I was born, this was recognized within the UN in 1965 already. The critical role of youth was recognized by the General Assembly for building and maintaining global peace and making peace with nature. I mean, we've been seeing sort of the narrative going also in the direction that we do need to have for stable and resilient and sustainable societies. We do need to have a good health, a good environment, and so on. So, the Science Policy Panel will be an independent intergovernmental panel. It will bring to the fore knowledge, insights, for policymakers to take sound decisions. And now some of you will end up maybe in that space. You may become policymakers, or you may pursue an academic career, or perhaps you will end up in the private sector, becoming a chemical engineer, or maybe working in a startup. Being able to contribute to that solution space that we are talking about. So I think it's critical that this discussion is taking place and within this group, and education plays a major role as well. And I think with your peers, and also maybe also looking critically at the systems that we have to early on realize a couple of these critical almost existential things for society. They need to be thought through at every stage of life, including for children, youth, and education system, formal or informal, is critical. But of course, you are also a very important stakeholder, and this is also mentioned. You may recall for the last open working group, we did a bit of an in-depth study, like you did, look at the other panels, what are others kind of putting in place. But we explicitly also recognize those that are affected by the possible impact of the panel as a group. And it's nice to see that resonate also with your mentioning of vulnerable people, because actually, often children are disproportionately affected. Also, for example, on the air quality. Then no doubt you're bringing fresh perspectives and innovation, and we need that, and we need to keep on being inspired and stay in touch with what the opportunities are. I mean, there's a lot to be harnessed in terms of digitalization, and that's another point. I think youth are much better versed than many of us in terms of social media advocacy. But also, literally maybe being smarter and getting knowledge on the table. And we need to really harness that. And then finally, the networks and the collaboration that you have as peers within your other kind of networks. I think they're really critical, and this cross-border collaboration can really also help, further international cooperation, exchange of ideas, and sharing of best practices. So flexible outreach, etc. The flexibility card, I think I would certainly endorse, not to keep things vague, but just because we want a panel that remains responsive and effective and impactful in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm
Do you mind
sorry.
passing? Thank you so much, Letitia, Sheila, and Tessa. For the final opening remarks, I want to open the floor to Anna Paula. Maybe you could come up and take my seat.
I'll give her my
Sure.
nice. Sorry. I was a little bit late. I came prepared. First, I'd like to thank the Children and Major and Youth Major Group for co-organizing an event last week on the how to ensure the integrity of the Science Policy Panel, and for Olga for representing you all so well. Thank you, Olga. It's always a pleasure to be in the meetings that you organize, even if it's on a Sunday morning. Well, the youth today are inheriting a world facing complex challenges, and the ever-present threats of the multiple planetary crises, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, desertification, land degradation, ocean acidification, food insecurity, water insecurity. The list never stops. That's why we are saying multiples now. Makes navigating the future a challenging risk. We are also facing issues like stronger corporate influence, rising inequality, shrinking democratic space, and the unpredictable nature of human decisions. The impact of climate change on environmental degradation is reshaping societies, economies, environments, and the way we live. For all those reasons, the new Science Policy Panel has an incredibly important role in correcting our path of destruction. To correct this path, we all need to know what is causing the destruction, so we are not oblivious. Knowledge empowers people to demand change. While science, robust independent science, is showing that pollution and the unsound management of chemicals and waste negatively impact the environment, human health, and well-being, too many governments, policymakers, and the big industry are shutting their eyes to science and deploying biased experts to create doubt and undermine scientific facts, suffocating scientific evidence at the expense of people and the planet. The right of everyone to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its application, that's the full name of the right to science, requires that policies be based on the best available, generally accepted scientific evidence. And there is a very simple reason for that. When science is compromised, it permeates decision-making with dire consequences for people and the planet. Over the past decades, tobacco, pharmaceutical, petrochemical, and agricultural business, amongst many others, have worked to suppress research and analysis regarding their failure to respect human rights, spreading disinformation, resulting in delayed action on the part of governments. Carefully drafting the mandate of the new Science Policy Panel gives us a chance to do things differently. And to fulfill this goal, a Science Policy Panel on chemicals, waste, and pollution prevention should include, in our opinion, the following elements. First, a clear commitment to respect and protect human rights, which should be reflected in the preamble and in the operating principles, alongside principles of prevention, precaution, transparency, gender equality, no discrimination, intergenerational equity, and international solidarity. Two, a comprehensive conflict of interest policy and a body to manage those claims. Experts with conflicts of interest or potential conflicts should not be associated with the panel's work. Three,
Information on environmental and health impacts should not be subject to full disclosure, should be subjected to full disclosure, support informed decision-making in the public interest. The panel needs to strive to be transparent, ensuring the right to information on environmental matters. 4, I only go to 6, so stay with me. 4, the right to participation must be operationalized throughout the different modalities of the work of the panel and its subsidiary bodies. The panel should welcome submissions from observers and integrate indigenous knowledge systems and citizen science in its work. The CYMG calls for the establishment of a youth expert advisory group would certainly contribute to improve the quality of the panel's work. 5, the panel should establish a system to prevent and address intimidation and reprisals against anyone engaging with the work of the panel. Attacks against scientists aimed at discrediting and silencing them violate their rights and are contrary to the basic functioning and purpose of science policy interfaces. And finally, international cooperation, including capacity building, technology transfer, mobilization of resource, and sharing of scientific knowledge. Those elements, we believe, would help ensuring that the panel is guided by the development, health, and environmental needs of present and future generations. To promote prosperity and quality of life for all, the needs of today's generation should be met without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That is intergenerational equity. Decisions being taken by those currently living can affect the lives and rights of those born years, decades, or many centuries in the future. It's our hope that states will meet the challenge that falls upon them by carefully drafting a new science policy panel with an ambitious mandate informed by robust, independent science and what has been called experts of living experiences, like you, the youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ana Paula, and thank you to all the opening remarks. I think we were very, very happy to see a lot of intersections between the youth priorities and what our high-level representatives are saying, especially in terms of intergenerational equity and recognizing local and indigenous knowledge. And so we're very also looking forward to engaging with the member states and hopefully getting very strong, some of these very strong principles through to the final text. So I'll move on swiftly to the next session. So we have a brief scene setting session that will be led by Zuhair and Stephen. Zuhair is one of the global coordinators of CYMG, and Stephen is part of the Chemicals, Waste and Pollution Working Group at CYMG. So they'll be presenting some updates from CYMG's work on the Science Policy Panel, as well as some capacity building on Resolution 5/8 and its relevance to why we're all gathered here today. So I welcome both Zuhair and Stephen. Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our speakers. Oh, and to our speakers, of course, you're welcome to, I'm sure you're very busy, so you're welcome to get on with your work, but also you're welcome to come to stay and hear the rest of the discussion.
Thank you. Are we going for social sessions?
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, okay, then I'm allowed to, Madam Chair said that I'm allowed to continue. So yes, so we are actually briefing you about the outcomes of the recent chemicals waste pollution related processes and what happened in those spaces. First of all, I want to thank all of you to attend with us. We see a lot of other stakeholders supporting us. I really share my heartfelt gratitude to them, to supporting youth and joining the Youth Consultative Meeting. Obviously, a lot of people are not being able to join in person for visa issue from the global south countries, which we are very sad of. But I hope they're joining us online, because we can see more than 30 people are joining us online, even in the Sunday morning. So, okay, maybe we can just move to the next slide. Well, as you know that this resolution, this process actually came after the implementation of the resolution 5/8, which was, and then following the implementation of that, several WEG sessions were organized. We started with Nairobi, where we had the first part of the first session, and then we had the resume session in Bangkok with the first meeting, and then we had the second meeting in December last year in Nairobi again, and now we're in Geneva, the final meeting. Hopefully this is going to be the final one. And then we are going to have a great proposal of the Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution Prevention. And maybe we can just skip this part. This has already been mentioned many times. And this is just the view of the resolution, which you are already informed of, and we really don't need to walk through that. Yes, so there's always a question why we need a science policy panel on chemicals, waste and pollution prevention. And I think that our opening segment speakers actually said this in very well, and we are well informed of why we need that, because we already have panels for the climate change, for the biodiversity and ecosystem services. They're making the assessments and informing the negotiation, and also those assessments are not just informing negotiation or influencing the negotiation, also helping us to understand what's the state of the particular areas that the panel is covering, those panels are covering. And we are also making informed choices. I mean, as citizens, as stakeholders, apart from the governments, but I understand that the main purpose of such panels are to inform the governments, what's happening in the world. And unfortunately, we didn't have a panel on chemicals, waste and pollution. We do have several multilateral environmental agreements covering different aspects of chemicals, waste and pollution. Some are underway under the negotiation now, like plastics one. And we also have some other working groups like the nitrogen one and other processes ongoing, where we need more and more scientific assessments to inform the negotiation, because we have seen that the negotiations, the decisions that are made through these negotiations are not often driven by the scientific facts. Most of the time we're saying that driven by the political interest. So that's why we need this panel more than anything else. And that's the major need of this panel. Moving to the next slide. I have already mentioned, and our previous speakers mentioned about the panels that we have. We also have GEO, which is not perhaps a panel, but a process which also produce, quality assessment reports covering all the aspects of environment from time to time, periodically. Moving to the next one. So yeah, this has already been mentioned, and this is kind of a visualization of the roadmap of the panel, and we know that we are heading to the intergovernmental meeting, hopefully after the negotiations are done on the panel here in Geneva. And then we have the first session also planned to happen back to back with the intergovernmental meeting. Okay, I'm just covering the first part, and then you can just come to cover the nitrogen. So UNIA 6 also, we had at UNIA 6, we also experienced the negotiation of several resolutions covering different aspects of chemicals, waste and pollution. For instance, for the UNIA, it's always a practice. It's a good practice to have a resolution on sound management of chemicals and waste. And then we also had a very interesting resolution, which is the air pollution. And obviously this panel is also expected to cover a bit of air pollution, assessment of the air pollution, because that's mentioned in the preamble section of the UNIA 5/8 resolution. Apart from that, we also had another resolution which is on highly hazardous pesticides. Luckily, these 3 of the resolutions were adopted, and now we are at the implementation phase. And UNIA 6 also had a lot of other resolutions, total 15, and these 3 are more relevant to the areas that the future panel will be covering. As already Asil mentioned in the first segment, that we had a lot of commemoration in the intersessional period. For instance, we did the joint webinar / commemorative event with UNEP, and there are different teams on zero waste and youth action. And we had a lot of participation from our group and different organizations around the world. And yeah, this is already mentioned by Asil, that we also collectively prepared a written submission to inform UN Special Rapporteur's report on gender and toxics to the UN General Assembly. Most interestingly, hopefully this panel will also make assessment on the plastic pollution, as because that's also under the broader domain of chemicals, waste, and pollution. And I think we also need to have a bit of what's that called? Information what's happening in the INC process. As you know, it also came from the same UNIA session, which is UNIA 5.2. The resolution was 5/14, and then after the implementation, UNEP also started organizing intergovernmental negotiating committee sessions, and so far we had 4 sessions out of the 5 sessions that has been mentioned in the roadmap of INC. And now we are heading towards the 5th session, which is expected to be the final one, hopefully, to finish the negotiation in Busan. But I don't know, maybe Rachel, you can share later what's your expectation from the process, because you're also following that. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, giving a lot of benefits of doubts to the member states to finish the work, hopefully, and we are going to have a very strong instrument by this December. On plastic pollution. And so far in the plastic pollution process, we are also engaging. We have a different working group working on that, the Plastic Action Working Group. And as you know, that plastic process, the INC process has become broader and bigger for having more stakeholders in. They have invited observers from the ECOSOC and other ME accredited organizations. That's why we created a youth coalition, and we are actually engaging in the INC process through the youth coalition. Obviously, our constituencies they're supporting in every manner. We just came out from the 4th session, where luckily there was some at least outcomes, where in the next page, so before the final session, no, sorry, I cannot maybe just assume that it's going to be final. Before the 5th session, we are going to have several key intersessional works. Most importantly, there are 2 ad hoc intersessional open-ended expert groups are convened following the decision at INC4. One will be covering broadly the means of implementation, specifically focusing on the financial mechanism for the future treaty. And then another working group, expert group, will cover mostly the chemicals of concern, criteria, non-criteria based approaches. This is too long, but yeah, just to brief, just the chemicals of concerns and related matters. So these 2 expert groups will also convene at least one in-person meeting that has been scheduled to happen in August 24, from 24 to 28 in Bangkok. And also they will work mostly in the electronic manners. They will come out with a proposal for the consideration. Proposals, because 2 groups will make 2 proposals, and that will be considered at the 5th session. Also, it is decided that there will be another open-ended legal drafting group, which will start work at INC 5. And so far, for the legal drafting group, they will work in non-prescriptive manner. Their task is to translate and ensure that the negotiated text is a legally sound text. But if they find any difficulties or any areas of divergence, then they'll send it back to the plenary of INC for further consideration. But this is not kind of a decision-making body. And neither they will not make a proposal. They'll forward that back to the plenary of INC. And after and one of the major outcome of the INC4 is that there's 5 subgroups under 2 contact groups, and negotiation happened in the subgroups covering different aspects of the plastics treaty. And these subgroups yielded with 5 non-papers, which streamlined not a lot of streamlining happened, but in some cases, some in areas that streamlined and came out with these 5 non-papers, which will be compiled. And so far, the name has been given is the compilation document, but we never know what is this going to be referred to. So last time it was referred, the document which was negotiated was referred as a revised draft. So the compilation document will be the basis of negotiation at the INC 5. Now, for the open-ended legal drafting group, this is completely closed for the stakeholders. It is just open for the legal expert from the member states. But for the ad hoc intersessional expert groups, what we can see in the guidance document for the ad hoc expert groups, that there will be some few spaces for experts from the observers, organizations, because that was a lot of member states express their interest to bring some experts from the observer side as well. And then maybe I'm done with my part. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I will continue on Juha's presentation. I will especially present on the UNEP nitrogen working group and how youth also contribute in this process. So as a background, UNEP working group on nitrogen was established as the basis of UNEA Resolution 414 and later expanded in Resolution 52 on sustainable nitrogen management. And this is to facilitate the implementation and to strengthen the engagement by member states and stakeholders in this topic, which is sustainable nitrogen management. And UNEP Nitrogen Working Group has several meetings that also includes us as the stakeholders, also youth. And we participate in some of the meetings, and I will present the 5th meeting presentation. So next slide. So in the 5th meeting of the UNEP Nitrogen Working Group, both youth delegates participated in online and also offline in Nairobi. And we also participate before the process to review the policies, review the previous nitrogen working group meetings to build more inclusive and also meaningful engagement in the process. And we provide 4 points. First, we call for UNEP to provide guidance on addressing policy fragmentation through improved inter-agency coordination. And then the second one, we suggest to enhance collaboration between UNEP and sector-specific international UN entities to provide countries with tailored expertise on sustainable nitrogen management. And we also emphasize the need for further support and guidance for technical and policy preparation and implementation to accelerate action to reduce nitrogen waste globally by 2030. And we also recommend in the session additional national action plan areas, including monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and provision of the timelines to enhance monitoring and evaluation on this topic. But we do not only participate in the UNEP nitrogen working group after the 5th meeting, we also engage in the processes after. If we go to the next slide, we can see that we also engage with the UNEP nitrogen working group, some of the workers in Nairobi. We had a dialogue, and we would like to have, for example, potential collaboration in capacity building for youth, in producing a special report in the youth language that can be accessible. And we are discussing about how those implementation can go. And then we believe that we would like also to mention our support on the UNEP nitrogen working group continuation on identifying the current situation and progress of member states in applying measures, for example, by having the national focal point. Up until the 5th meeting, there was 87 national focal points for nitrogen management. And we'd like also to announce that the 6th meeting for the UNEP nitrogen working group will be held soon in the online platform, fully online from June 26 until June 27, 2024. And we believe that our example of engaging in a UNEP nitrogen working group is an example on how youth can meaningfully engage in a science policy interface. And we hope that this example or this case study can build onto the improvement of the proposal in the text of negotiations in the following days. So we will continue to the next session, and I will give the mic back to Enku. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zohair and Stephen. I think very, very briefly, you put together the important aspects in the sessions that have been leading up and that will contribute to the coming week. So we're gonna have a bit of a break, a 30-minute break until 11, and then back at 11, we'll have a breakout discussion more about how we're gonna organize ourselves in the next week. Right, so thank you. See you in 30 minutes.
We are in a break for 30 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's also inform.
Hello, is the sound off? Some of us cannot hear you. Hi, Maria.
Dear online participants, thank you so much for waiting. We will resume in another 3 minutes, just waiting for the rest of our in-person participants to join in. Can you please confirm that we are audible from the room? And we're gonna start with the informal consultation and preparatory discussions for the week and all organizational matters. Please do confirm in the chat. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for waiting and joining.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Those online?
Yeah, online. Okay.
We can hear.
Hello?
Yes, they say yes.
No,
Yo.
that was a long time ago. Can someone type in the chat if they can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we
Awesome.
can.
Okay. So I'm Henrietta, and I'll be taking us through the second aspect of today's session. Ideally, we're to be having a breakout room, but we would make it a roundtable discussion instead. So we'll just have one session after the other. We would be reviewing the official documents for week 3, the youth's position, organization matters, and then after that, we'll go on to discuss towards a youth science policy forum on chemicals, waste, and pollution for supporting the work of the future panel. How we, as children and youth, can be engaged and potentially self-organize for a future panel, right? So we would go on right away. Just before we start, I just want to be sure, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
So for the
and loud.
official
Yes,
documents,
we can hear you clearly.
okay, thank you. Thank you all for the feedback. So for the official documents, I'll be sharing, or
Yeah, I'll do.
yeah, so Asil will be sharing the central document for work 3, the open-ended working group 3. And on that document, you would see the working documents to be negotiated. We have some documents that have been updated, but we have the most current document on that central document. So we would go one after the other. We have the provisional agenda, annotated provisional agenda, the compilation of proposals for establishing a science policy panel, draft rules of procedure, draft financial procedures, draft process for determining the work program, including prioritization, draft procedures for the preparation and clearance of panel deliverables, draft conflict of interest disclosure form, proposals on the establishment of the panel to be considered by the intergovernmental meeting, and proposals to give effect to the arrangements to be considered by the intergovernmental meeting. Which one? I use this. Oops.
Stop.
No, that's it.
We can stop the share. Yes.
Right there. I want to share this. Great. Thank you. So for the provisional agenda, we'll just quickly review it. It'll just be a quick review. We wouldn't have much to make. We wouldn't have much input to make in this. So on this. So for the agenda, so this is the draft agenda, the provisional agenda for the work 3. We have an opening session, election of officers, adoption of agenda and other organizational matters, under which we have the adoption of the agenda, organizational matters, preparation of proposals for the establishment of a science policy panel, recommendations to the executive director of UNEP for the preparation of the intergovernmental meeting to establish a science policy panel, other matters, adoption of the report of the session, and closure of the session. So for the meetings in the coming days, these are the items we'll be looking at. We'll move on to, if anyone has anything to say, please feel free to put your hand up or put it in the chat. But we'll move on to the annotated agenda, which will give us throw more light onto The provisional agenda, thank you. So for the annotated provisional agenda, we have some background information on 1 and 2. So the reason for the panel from the Union Resolution 5/6. Then we go to the opening, that's item 1, which is the opening of the session from the provisional agenda. And there's more details put in here. So the third session of the ad hoc open-ended working group would be opened at 10 a.m. I'm sure CST, right? CST, sorry. On Monday, 17th of June, 2024, by the chair, Godi Alkinet from Netherlands. And then we'll have the opening statements delivered by the government of Switzerland, and then representatives of UNEP, and then WHO. The second item on the agenda is election of officers. So at the first and second sessions, the ad hoc open-ended working group elected the following officers in accordance with the rules of procedure of the Environment Assembly. So the chair, we have the co-chairs and the countries that they are from, and then the rapporteur. On item 3, we have the adoption of the agenda in other organizational matters. So after the provisional agenda is adopted, we'll go to organizational matters where the open-ended working group may wish to meet in a plenary session from 10 to 1 p.m. and from 3 to 6 p.m. subject to adjustments as necessary. We'd also have the open-ended working group considering the scenario note prepared by the chair, which contains proposed plans and general expectations for the session. And then we would wish to establish contact groups as may deem necessary and to specify mandates. And from the regional consultations, we know that we would have at most 2 contact groups meeting at a time. So all that will be discussed during that session. Then we go to item 4, which has to do with the preparation of proposals for establishment of a science policy panel. So we have the outcome of the second session of the ad hoc open-ended working group, compilation of proposals that was for the establishment of the SPP, which is set out in the document entitled Compilation of Proposals for Establishing a Science Policy Panel for Further Consideration by the ad hoc open-ended working group at its third session. After which the open-ended working group requested the Secretariat to prepare the following draft text for proposals for consideration by the open-ended working group at its third session. And these documents include a draft rules of procedure, draft financial procedures, draft process for determining the work program in prioritization, draft procedures for preparation and clearance of panel deliverables, draft conflict of interest disclosure form. These were presented at the regional meetings. For those who were able to attend, there were discussions on it, and I'm sure there will be suggestions made subsequently. And we'll be also going through these documents today as well, and then see what inputs we can make. We'll discuss our position on some of these items. So the open-ended working group may also wish to consider any information to be provided by governments, observers, and other relevant stakeholders. At that point, can we intervene the 12 points? Can you intervene?
Yeah, but you can do it very quickly.
Okay. So we'll move to item 5. So recommendations to the Executive Director of UNEP for the preparation of the intergovernmental meeting to establish the Science Policy Panel. So at its second session, the ad hoc open-ended working group requested the Secretariat to prepare for consideration at the third session of the ad hoc open-ended working group. 1, proposals on the establishment of the panel to be considered by the intergovernmental meeting And 2, proposals to give effect to arrangements to be considered by the intergovernmental meeting. And we hope that these recommendations would be discussed at item 5. And the ad hoc open-ended working group would be invited to make recommendations to the executive director of UNEP for the preparation of the intergovernmental meeting for the purpose of considering the establishment of a science policy panel. And on the last, okay, not the last item, sorry. So we have item 6, other matters. At this point, the ad hoc open-ended working group may wish to consider other matters raised during the session, so like an AOP session. And then item 7, which is the last but one, the adoption of the report, hopefully, fingers crossed. At the 3rd session, the ad hoc open-ended working group will be invited to consider and adopt a draft report reflecting the proceedings of the meeting, on understanding that the rapporteur will be entrusted with its finalization in consultation with the Secretariat under the authority of the chair in accordance with the standard UN practice. The final report of the session will be circulated after the closure of the session. And hopefully item 8, which we look forward to, would be it's be expected that the ad hoc open-ended working group will conclude the work of the 3rd session by 6 p.m. on Friday, 21st of June, 2024. So this is just like a run through what we'll be going through for the next few days until the 21st at 6 p.m. hopefully. Do you want to add something?
All right, so thank you so much, Henrietta, for taking us through the annotated agenda and what we're expecting to do. I just wanted to add a couple of points, and I have some points to highlight for those who are attending in person and for those who are joining us online as well. It's also good to see that we have 35 participants joining us online. That shows a very good commitment. And what we're trying to do is to keep those who are joining us online or in the meeting list engaged with the work and the interventions, etc. So the first thing I would like those who are joining online or in person to make sure that you have access to this document. If you go to the coordination central document, this is the short URL I'm highlighting. I hope it's readable. So this is the access that we are putting everything together. That's the working documents that Henrietta was mentioning about, the agenda, the information document, our intervention, the policy, everything is in this document. So it's the easiest way to make sure that you are keeping up with the progress. I hope you can read it. The second point, I wanted to make sure that those who are joining us in person, we are having our own WhatsApp group, coordination WhatsApp group. So if you're not yet part of that group, please let us know. So we will add you. So we can also keep updates about what's going on. And then as we move forward to the discussion in the youth priorities, the written submission, we can have a quick review on the compilation of proposals that Henrietta will take us in the discussion. Will moderate that part. Before going, so I would like to take the opportunity and just double stress in some points regarding the seating arrangements, regarding the nature of engagements, and just a quick reminders. I'm sure that I can see a lot of familiar faces, and we all know about the rules and the procedures when it comes to contact groups and everything, but it's always good reminders to just have a fresh updates in the terms of rules and procedures and all that stuff. First of all, when it comes to the plenary and we have the name tag of children and youth, so we never deliver personal interventions. We never have like personal opinions. Rather, it's a consultative process and a collective view that we have been developing. For SPP, it's been already 1.5 years. So it should always be kind of a coordinated and collective intervention. That's for the plenary. And then, as you could see, there's a two option of plenary intervention, two possible timing. That's the agenda item 4 and the agenda item 5, where major group and stakeholders, they are also invited to give some general statements and some sort of intervention when it comes to these two agenda items. The second point I wanted to double stress is the contact groups. The contact groups are, and this is mainly concerning the in-person participants because it's completely held in person. The contact groups are, there might be an intervention possible. So stakeholders and major groups are encouraged and invited to make intervention, but with a specific text proposals to the discussion, no general statements, no vague asks. It's rather just kind of a very focused textual proposal. And you could see in the submission, we have some, and then we can develop more going forward together and following. The content, one of the most important rules that we should always think is that if you don't like whatever is being mentioning in the contact group, we are never in a position to call out member states by name or calling out their opinion. Rather, it should be just like, following the, the professional code of conduct and, the multilateralism ways of just presenting our views in the most respectable way, because without getting support from a member state, no proposal can be incorporated to the text, never. So we can later on discuss on the best way forward to proceed with getting some bilaterals, kind of getting some support from member states, and this is what we will continue discussing in morning briefing and the evening coordination meetings. Morning meetings will be from 9:30 to 10 or 10:30. Depending on the day, and then the evening, except tomorrow, because we're going to have the reception by the Swiss government from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. So from Tuesday till Friday, the evening coordination meeting will be from 6 to 7 p.m. We will have this place for our coordination meetings either in the morning or the evening. Alrighty, so that's much of the main elements. Please make sure that you are in the WhatsApp group. Make sure that you have access to this folder. If you can see it, we have some prepared documents for this. In the central document, this is the main document we use for note-taking, and this has been very useful for us who are not joining, or we always can get back to it and see which member states or which participants and which views we can build in. And this is the draft agenda for day 1, and the list will grow. So in the document for week 2, I think we have over 50 pages of notes and documents, but this is very useful for us during the week to always get back to it and reflect. Who fill it? It's us. It's the responsibility of everyone. It doesn't need to be a part of the Global Steering Committee or CYMG or whatever. The access is open for all. Anyone is in the contact group, please support with taking notes. Same goes for interventions. We try to give the space for as many new faces as possible and as many participants as possible. So feel free to join the intervention and deliver it, help in drafting and everything. Well, that's pretty much in the organization parts and logistics. We will, when we move forward to the morning briefing and coordination calls, we will need to seek some supports for people to follow which contact group. So as for now, we have some sort of still not a clear image on the plan and what's going to happen. But once we have more clarity and the mandate is clear for each contact group, this will happen tomorrow in the morning in the plenary. And then we will later on, we can get interest in who is interested to follow which, so we can kind of delegate the work. And otherwise, it's 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. if we
Does it?
Alright. So by now we can proceed to the youth priorities discussion and also the compilation proposal. So we can revisit the youth priorities and reflect on it. We can revisit the written submission and the textual proposal and reflect on it. The floor is open. And then if time allows, after these 2 points, we can go to the compilation of proposals and have another look on the proposals and the other documents that will be negotiated and used during the week. The floor is open. Let's try to, get all the inputs. If would possible to get 1 or 2 note takers for this session. If anyone in the room or online are able to help, please go to this document, the central document, and then under this section you can take notes so we can, compile it. Yeah, now I'll give the floor back to Henrietta. Henrietta, let's get the priorities and textual, etc. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asil. So we'll get right to it. I want this to be as informal as possible. We're just having a consultation. We're supposed to put our inputs here. This is where you can freely express yourself. Out there, we have to be very diplomatic. So we would start with the, should I say, the main meat, which is the compilation of the proposals for the compilation of proposals for establishing the science policy panel. So we'll be up on the screen very soon. So this actually contains the text. And
maybe perhaps we can start with the priorities.
Okay.
You can use this one for presentation.
Sure. Okay, so I think we can hold on to that and start with the priorities, the youth priorities for week 3, right? So just a moment, I want to project the priorities for week 3. So we started the engagement for the science policy panel. We've had the first open-ended working group, second, third. We've had intersessional periods, we've had regional consultations, and following through the process, we as CYMG have certain issues or certain aspects that we'd like to highlight, and we'd like to discuss amongst ourselves how we can push this forward, how we can move this forward, including getting some of our language in the actual text, right? So one of the priorities we have been pushing for is to get intergenerational equity as part of the text. And it is in the text, but it's been bracketed. Bracketed means that it hasn't reached a universal consensus. That means everyone has not yet agreed that it should be accepted. And we are still trying to push for it. One of the main reasons why we are looking at intergenerational equity is the fact that we want to not just secure the future of, not just secure the lives of those now, not just the children, not just with adults, not just the senior citizens, we're also looking at the generations to come, right? And that is the concept of intergenerational equity for justice and fairness of treatment across generations, including future generations, and it ties in very well with sustainability, right? So that is one of the points we have been trying to get across. It's in the text, but it's been bracketed, and we are trying to get all member states to come to that agreement to adopt it as part of the main text. We also want an inclusive plenary, inclusive plenary functions to ensure multi-stakeholder collaboration. So this is to ensure that the functions of the plenary reflect inclusivity by referencing major groups and other stakeholders recognized by the Agenda 21 of the Rio 1992 Summit, ensuring a broad representation of expertise and perspectives in the panel. So we want the recognition of these well-established stakeholder groups to address the aspect of multi-stakeholderism by seeking collaboration, partnerships, coordination, synergies with the major groups, which comprises people from academia, from industries, from business, from major groups, from IGOs, and other stakeholders to enhance knowledge sharing, cooperation, foster innovation, and strengthen collective action. Another priority we have also been requesting for or trying to push across is the Youth Expert Advisory Group.
For the disciplinary functions, maybe
Should I give him?
Take the mic.
Okay, so Ankun, you can take the floor.
Yeah, just for two, maybe Asil or Olga can give a brief on what the last discussion was on major stakeholder groups and the limitations.
So the discussion in terms of the civil society engagements and the major group provision in the proposal, there has been some sort of diverging views when from wide range of stakeholders and major groups, because right now what we have in the proposal is it's not very clearly stated that major group and stakeholder terms following the UNIA arrangements, and the WEG is a subsidiary body of UNIA. That's why we have the 9 major group represented, and it's in the plenary sittings, and we follow this aspect in this process. But in the future science policy panel, of course, the mechanism of civil society and stakeholder engagement will be adopted and finalized with the first plenary, or perhaps maybe later on in the plenary meetings. So one of the different views that have been put on the table is, for example, there were some stakeholders calling for a broader stakeholder provision, so that can give somehow some flexibility for the future, arrangements, and major group system and major group major groups have been advocating for the adding of the provision of the 9 major group. So by doing so, for example, each one of the existing 9 major group will already have a flag and dedicated place for engagement. But another view were like when it comes to some details in the process, for example, we have the interdisciplinary expert committee, one of the proposed institutional arrangement body for the future panel. There are mentioning of 5 seats for civil society, and there are some mentioning of 5 sectors, but rather we got some proposals from the submissions from stakeholder advocating for 7 that can be 3 for social sciences and 3 for different sectors and 1 for youth. So that's also one example of proposals. So we will have more constructive discussion in the afternoon with the broader major group consultations. But right now, and according to the process that we have been doing, we have been advocating for the 9 major groups, as this will already grant a seat for children and youth major group in the process. But then this is something that we can reflect, and I would also suggest if anyone has any additional points or some other perspectives or some feedback, as we go one by one, we can stop and then reflect on it. If there's any way to improve it further, or if you feel that something is missing, we will be happy also to incorporate more ideas and more us.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other question or clarification? Those online? Okay. So thank you very much for that, Asil, and thank you, Ankun, for your question. So that's that with the multi-stakeholder collaboration. We are moving on to the establishment of the Youth Expert Advisory Group. So as part of our priorities, we actually want to institutionalize a Youth Expert Advisory Group. For the panel that's going to be formed, obviously they have, as Olga had mentioned earlier on, a set of qualifications to be on that panel. But we value the perspectives of children and youth, and thank you. We value the perspectives of children and youth, and so we are seeking that a Youth Expert Advisory Group be formed an inclusive group such that it can also give recommendations to the panel, taking our perspectives into consideration. The group should have equal representation across regions, genders, with a special focus on inclusion for vulnerable and marginalized communities. We are hoping that the voices of youth experts, early career professionals would be added to the panel's work of program, right? So that's the third priority we are focusing on. The fourth is a human rights-based approach. We want to adopt a human rights-based approach for the management of chemicals and waste and preventing pollution by recognizing, respecting and meaningful documenting and incorporating the knowledge and practices of indigenous peoples and local communities while addressing existing and mitigating intersectional vulnerabilities faced by communities in health, conflicts, and economic factors. So in addition to our point on intergenerational equity, we are proposing that the panel embeds a human rights-based approach. In addition, we want a flexible and iterative approach. So we value the concept of continuous learning. We want the panel to continually review its recommendations. We want a very flexible schema, not so rigid, so that if there are new advancements in technology that can actually support the panel, it doesn't have to go through, it goes through the necessary, but not necessarily a bureaucratic process that would prevent us from actually having the sound management of chemicals and waste as we want it. So that's also another aspect we are looking at. Then we are looking at complementarity. We want to support specific principles on transparency, gender equality, accountability, and capacity building while ensuring that they complement and reinforce each other in the overall framework. And then the next aspect, which has been a very long conversation. I don't know about the other regional groups, but for the African regional group, there's a very long conversation on the principle of conflict of interests, which is very essential to the panel because it's part of the reasons why we are forming this panel, because we do not want, again, as we've seen, having the big companies do their own research and then water down the actual recommendations just to promote sales of their products. And so we want to ensure that scientific evidence is presented in this panel and that the policy outcomes of this panel and implementation of such are not guided by entities, organizations, or groups that stand to gain from unsound management of chemicals and waste or from poor implementation of sustainable policies. And so this is something that you would see that will come strongly in the coming days on the conflict of interest. There's been a prepared form that would also review, hopefully. Then capacity building and awareness. This is also another aspect that we are trying to push. We are hoping to bridge the gaps and ensure that everyone globally is at par. We know there are certain countries that are far advanced in science, and we want all countries to be at par so we can have trust, we can all move at the same speed when it comes to coming together to put knowledge and skills and expertise for the science policy panel. So we want a flexible outreach mechanism where the panel is able to easily reach out to other scientific bodies or other corporations or entities that are having similar work to the panel. It's not so rigid, it's not so fixed that they cannot reach out to other entities that can actually give useful information. And then again, we want to focus on vulnerable communities. So the marginalized communities, we don't want them to be left out. We want them to be at the core because for years they have been bearing the brunt of the unsound management of chemicals and waste. So these are the 10 points that we are prioritizing. I acknowledge the feedback in the chat on addition of indigenous youth and local knowledge. If you have any other points to bring up, please feel free. Yes, I think Stephen wants to say something. To take the floor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. So I have a input for point number 3. So point number 3 is about the youth advisory group. Youth advisory group. I'd like to remind everyone to be like cautious on this point, and if this point is taken by the member states, to be cautious about the language that member state use. If this point is being taken by the why? Because like I heard like experience from like other constituency in other processes, like they also like member states have like similar kind of approach. Like they like to have like a youth expert advisory group. However, the establishment of that youth advisory expert advisory group limits the inclusion of other group of young people because like it's being selected by the member states. So like after considering and after reading the language, that other youth constituency decided, okay, we cannot let this language to happen. So like, please make sure that this point does not close our engagement as a youth constituency as a whole for the future engagement with the panel. Yeah, that's from me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stephen. I see there are two. Okay, Onia, you can take the floor, and then Samuel would also go after you.
Okay, thank you very much. And this opportunity to be here this morning. Yeah, we have a comprehensive document for the plans we have ahead. I would just want us to, like what I put down in the chat box, let's see how we can always visit this document as time goes on in future to be ensured that we are not going outside our plan. This is just like a business plan. What we intend to achieve over a period of time. And it's very important we also streamline it into what we call SWOT analysis. Like, yeah, we are being specific, that has been done. And we also need to set a time bound, like this is what we want to achieve at a particular time. And let's always find a way of coming back to be ensure we are not going outside the point. Thank you very much. Like I said, we have a very good paperwork and it's nice. And let's also look, always see how we can materialize it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nia. Point well taken. Samuel, you can take the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. So, sorry, yeah. So, during the presentation, I tried to scrutinize the documents, the compilation of the proposals and the draft rules of procedure. And it come to my attention that I think because currently after reading the interdisciplinary expert committee section, I think yeah, with the current situation of the language there, I think it's going to be hard to add a language on youth subcommittee. But I think I am pretty much believe. Sorry, Fongo is unmuted. It's echoing on my side. Can Fongo be muted? Fongo Eric, thank you. Can you? Yeah, sorry, it's echoing from my side. Yeah, thank you. So I was just saying that he is unmuted again, and it's echoing. Yeah. Yes, apologies. Now I forgot on what to say. But okay, so I was trying to see the language there. At the very least, the interdisciplinary expert committee is open to observers, at the very least. But I think since we are demanding for further institutionalization, I think we can leverage on the, because in here they want to engage the scientific community and other knowledge holders with the work program, and there's other bracket suggested paragraph as follows. Maybe, we can try to also leverage this entry point where, we try to map out the potential youth-led community, research community out there, in which they can cooperate with us and work in our interest to advance our advocacy in the independent expert community. In the in the interdisciplinary expert committee, because I think they are specifically wishing the panel to the interdisciplinary expert committee to engage with scientific community and other knowledge holders. I think this will be good if we can also propose knowledge holders and scientific community organization that is youth-led also. And I think we need to start looking on this alternative as well if we fail in case to include another language within the proposal and the rules of procedure on the establishment of the youth subcommittee. That's the first one. I think we can collaborate with the possible stakeholders from the scientific community that is led by youth and youth-centric. Second of all, I think just learning from the text, and learning from the demand that we have here, we want to ensure a human rights-based approach. So I think ensuring human rights-based approach, it must be complemented as well with the awareness that, I think we need to, let's say, how do I say it here? I think in order to promote human rights-based approach, aside from documenting and incorporating the knowledge and practices of the indigenous people and local communities, I think we also need to scrutinize the option if we can include also the language that, okay, we want human rights-based approach, not only for the people that we are trying to, to bring the attention to, for example, the local and indigenous people, but I think we need to also pay attention to the environmental human rights defenders. Because I think there are some incidents and cases around the world regarding environmental human rights defenders where they are working on a case, and I think it is against towards a certain corporate interest, and they are silenced. There are so many examples of it, especially within the plastic industry, because plastic supply chain is very wide and substantial. So, and there are so many major corporations leveraging from the presence of these plastic industries. So we need more attention on this. So we do not only highlight on the sectoral impact like conflict, health, economic, but also highlight also on the human-centric factor as well. We need to factor that into the calculation that we have. So this will be a much more value-adding contribution of the youth, I think, later in the committee regarding environmental human rights defenders, and also, protecting and safeguarding the interests of those defenders in advocating, a better situation in the field against corporate interests. And as we are trying to also ensure iterative approach, I think this will be linked because it needs a greater emphasis again. And I think that's all as of now. Maybe if I can just, regarding in the interdisciplinary expert committee, I think we might need to reconsider some alternative if we, let's say, because in the current brackets, there's no certain language that accommodate our interests of this strong institutionalization of the expert subcommittee of youth. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully now you are hearing us. So thank you, Samuel, for your thoughtful feedback. And if you can add that as a comment to the youth priorities, that would be so much appreciated, so we can use your language and incorporate that into the text. And actually, your intervention has just set the scene for our next task. So we will be dividing into 2 breakout sessions. One breakout session will be happening online, facilitated by ASIL, and the second one would be in person, facilitated by me and supported by Henrietta and Kuhn. And in these breakout sessions, we will go through the textual proposal for capacity building. We'll also look into the textual proposal on including intergenerational equity as an operating principle. And then once again, we'll discuss the language around youth expert advisory group, since we now understand that we need to be very sensitive about the language. And we will reconvene at 12:30 and we'll share our discussions with the broader group, and we'll conclude our meeting with some concrete proposals for upcoming negotiations. So someone has their hands up. Is it about the proceedings or Mensa? Go ahead.
Okay, greetings everybody. I'm quite pleased to be on this platform and meeting at this time. So I wanted to be clarified.
Please, we have some technical issues, so we do not hear you. So now we are heading into breakout session. So would you please just wait for a moment when Asil comes here and he will capture your feedback. Just a few moments, please. Why are you? Don't need this.
For in-person user meeting.
Yeah. I think one person will go just outside the Zoom table over there.
In the Zoom, there's no breakout room open yet.
No, he didn't understand what you said. Explain to him. This one.
There is a table over there, so in-person.
Oh, we are moving somewhere.
We're moving out, like, so that those in person are moving out.
Okay.
Then Asil.
Right. Mensa, you can take the floor.
Okay. Well, sorry for that technical glitch. Well, basically, I wanted to make a bit reference to some of the parts that was spoken earlier of, which needed a bit more clarification in terms of priority. We said to prioritize intergenerational equity in terms of inclusive outwork for children and youth. So I actually was trying to say that it is quite more important that we have a more specific approach to works that has to do with children and youth. And also if we are making sure we are taking the vulnerable along and the marginalized along with this kind of project, we need a more clear view and drive, a more applicable approach, because the issues affecting youth are more or less different from the issues and challenges that children faces. So in an organization with a broad framework to get a more positive approach towards solving these issues and tackling these challenges in terms of incorporating the youth and the children, needed a more, I was actually trying to see a more specific approach towards the youth-related issues and also issues that has to do with children. Basically, where I come from, in our society, we have numerous challenges and problems that basically is only applicable to young people, to youths. And also we have series of challenges that affect children that are underprivileged in too many cases, in healthcare issues, that are disabled, that too many of them. And also in terms of the youth, we also have quite number of challenges that are affecting the youth presently. I'm a Black person and I'm an African, so I'm speaking from that very perspective. I don't really know about other parts of the world, but from where I come from and my own direction, I wanted to see a more specific approach towards affecting the children, basically, and in what ways are we affecting these kids, in what manner are we affecting these kids, in what direction is the project targeted towards the kids and also to the youth, in what direction and approach is it targeting to the youths and young people, so that we can actually draw a conclusive line between these two sets of people, because these two people face different kinds of challenges, different forms of problems, like very, very different. So that is actually what I wanted to draw to, so that I can actually know if there are more specific or directional approach and works preservations for these two separate sets of people, because children and youth are actually very separate groups that face different challenges, not at the same time, that needs different approaches to tackle it. So that is actually the aspect I wanted to really come in on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And I believe this is an important, angle to look at the topic. But if you can suggest and write the points very, direct to the aspects of intergenerational equity, because the term and the way we are proceeding with incorporating the term is, I would say, it's not as well established as we are aiming at the moment. So a lot of work still needs to be done. So let's keep reflecting in the topic.
Sorry, before you move, sorry.
No, I'm not moving. I'm not moving. 1 second.
What kind of we are reflecting right now? Is it the draft ROP, the draft compilation, or what?
Yeah, that's what I was just sharing now. So what we're gonna do for the moment is that we will continue looking at the youth priorities, but with a focus more in a three main elements. So we can take the inputs and proceed with them in the intervention. So the outcome of the discussion will cover discussion on the intergenerational equity, the youth engagement and the youth expert advisory group, and the capacity building function. So these 3 points, drawing from the priorities, the proposals, will be our basis of discussion for the coming 30 minutes. And then we will incorporate all the inputs towards the intervention. First, let me share with you the central document. Under the online breakout in page 3, we would need, page 4, we would need support with take notes and note taking. I am trying my best to capture, and please do so. And I will present the document where we have the textual proposals and the priorities, so we can have them all in one place. Just give me a minute. My laptop is dying, but for the time being, if you have a reflection on these points, first let's find a note taker. Please indicate in the chat that you can help, and then we can take the next speaker. But as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the capacity building function, the youth expert advisory group, and the modalities of stakeholder engagement, and the intergenerational equity incorporation. So please focus your intervention in these. And then we can give the floor now for Patricia. And I hope that I answered Samuel's question. Otherwise, please, Samuel, write it in the chat. Patricia, the floor is yours. You are muted. Otherwise, if that's a legacy hand, we can take Samson.
Hello.
Hi, you're audible.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so I would want to speak to point 3, establish a youth expert advisory, but I think this is very key, especially pertaining into intergenerational equity. The last sentence reads, this group should have equal representation across regions and genders, with a specific focus on inclusion from vulnerable and marginalized groups. So in my mind's view, I'm just wondering the definition of youth, because coming into the African context, a youth from the EU, that's the African Union Commission, is basically from 15 to 35, which is not like those in other continents, and also, I mean, in the UN context as well, where mostly youth is categorized as 15 to 24. So I think we should be very clear with that. And even in regards to taking 15 to 24, even sometimes with Commonwealth, which is even up to 29, you mostly appreciate that in different continents. Let me cite Africa, for instance, the level of expertise and requirements, especially mentioning about them, the youth expert groups having educational qualifications like PhDs, should actually be looked at, because in the percentage of the vulnerable and marginalized communities where we are advocating for their inclusion, I mean, most do not have that. So I think that should be elaborate in order to, solve some of the foreseeable, issues that will come up in the future. Yeah, so that's my contribution on that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. You can go next.
Hello? Can I go on?
Yes.
I'll put my submission in the document as well. I'm doing that right now. Thank you.
Patricia, are you speaking? Because you're muted. Yes, you can.
Hello, everyone. I'm Patricia Mbago from Kenya. And since I understand you're talking about you want equity because this is something you want also for the future, not for now. And basically, I deal a lot with young women and girls in my community, and people living with disability. And this year, I also got an award for the best female environmentalist in Kenya. And I would really love to make sure the girl child is protected, and we look into the specific needs that they have in the country, all over the country, especially in the marginalized groups, because my main plan is to work with all the marginalized, the disabled, the young girls, and the young women, because that's the youth group that I basically have. And I also intend to work countrywide, apart from just with the youth, also with the young girls, because as we train them, this is our future leaders, our leaders for tomorrow. So what we plan to do, I would like us to do something that will continue to generation and generation. So we're not going to start something that we are going to stop along the way. And my main idea is, and my target is the young girls and the women who play a very big role in our society and in our communities. I have a few proposals, and as we continue, I'll just share what I have in mind, and would like to get assistance in whichever way from the expertise, from the scientists, because we've done a lot on climate change. We've got so many volunteers in different counties, and we've been planting trees for the last 1.5 years. I personally have planted more than 3,000 trees in the past 6 months. And we also need seeds, we also need seedlings, and there's so much that we've been doing, and also changing the lives of these young girls, because we also have smaller groups that deal with what the young girls are really actually, the problems they are going through, even in their school. And even for those who are not in school, we've done our best to try and educate them as communities, because we've been volunteering, even financially, as a community.
Thank you, Patricia. No? Okay, so thank you so much. And the inclusion of the idea of taking the things and what we're doing from generation to generation is also something that it's really can, be aligned with the intergenerational equity, principle, is that whatever we do today is not compromising the future generations, and we should take into account everything in all the key processes and the policy interventions that we're doing. If it's this future science policy panel or any other MAAs or a treaty, that everything will be under this principle, will be aligned with keeping the rights of the future generations, that they are not here yet. So this is very important elements to consider, and the inclusion of marginalized communities and even those groups in vulnerable situations, and being also at the first line of exposure and impact of chemicals and waste. It's also something that's very important to be taking into account. So as you can see here, we have touched a bit on the terms of the Youth Expert Advisory Group, and this is what we discussed earlier. So this is the current position and the current proposals, and I think in the coming 20 minutes we can further reflect on it. We had some. Onia, I'm gonna give the floor for you. Please try keep it brief, but let me quickly go through the existing position. So the current language in the interdisciplinary expert committee mentioned that there is a possibility to have 5 representative of
Hello?
non-governmental participants. Yes?
Hello?
Yeah? Hello?
Yeah. I want to talk about on that speech.
Which
Beyond that,
which point?
and to get my thing.
I
think you make mention of it. Okay, I think okay.
We can't hear you. I mean,
not here for now.
It's not clear yet.
Like I just want to make comments, suggestions on capacity building.
Okay, yeah, capacity building. We will touch on it.
Can I go ahead? Hello?
Yeah, since we already touched on the intergenerational equity and the youth
Okay, no problem.
group,
Okay.
let's just very quickly try to wrap up, and then we will have the last segment in the capacity building. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
But also for the time being, if you can work out like a written comment, that would be very much appreciated. So I was referring to the existing text we have, and there's some sort of something on the table of having 5 non-governmental participants, And these 5 representatives will serve in this role from the following sectors: health, environment, industry, trade union, and public interest groups. So this is what we are trying to intervene and to first go with the major group and stakeholders proposing the 9 seats. So that's kind of then the children and youth space will be guaranteed by the process. And where we also requesting the establishment of a youth expert advisory group to function as a subcommittee of the interdisciplinary expert committee. And the whole idea, you can see in this document, it's also from the central document, there is a mandate, composition, tasks, and capacity building, and some sort of kind of a draft proposal on to which extent this youth expert advisory group can be useful and can also work along with other youth without kind of capturing the space or just being very exclusive for those who are in this group, but rather the chair or co-chair of this group should be sitting with the interdisciplinary experts committee that is part of the panel and to deliver youth collective views. So this is some sort on the table. So in the coming minutes, if you have something related to the intergenerational equity incorporation or the youth engagement with the future panel, please, it's the time now to get inputs. And we've listened earlier to some proposals in the language. So please let us know and raise your hand if you have any reflection. For the time being, I'm reading the chat comments and I see Masha mentioning that there's some missing elements, which is out of the box thinking. So according to Masha, that the youth and early career professional who work in the private sector for the company producing chemicals, waste, and pollution, referencing pharmaceutical companies, which also might have some sort of impact in terms of health and pollution. Could they be involved? And if they choose this career, can they work as a mediator between their firms and the SPP? So in my opinion, I believe the early career professional that works in such industries, in such companies, it's quite tricky if we are having the idea of mediators, because we might be ending up with a conflict of interest, some sort of aspect. But as we finalize the conflict of interest discussion, and if it's already a clear conflict of interest policy, then we don't know to which extent the policy will go. So perhaps would that be, we won't work with any industrial lobbyists or those who are involved, but what has been already agreed and discussed is that in order to move up to solutions and tackle the pollution, we all need to work collectively with private sector, with companies, with civil society. So it's a collective work. But in terms of placing this point in our language, where do you find it? Because yet we didn't specified what type of youth can be engaged. Rather, we are advocating for youth experts and youth with technical expertise related to the subject matter, but without having any certain of kind of distinguished, are they youth working in the academia or the private sector or companies? It's just still yet as a brother, even this, you can find it in the composition of the draft terms of reference for the group. So I see a hand raised. Joe, please.
Thank you, moderator. I just want to draw the attention to the discussion in relation to entrepreneurial skill development, especially the youth. I think there are a whole lot of unemployed youth all over Africa, and a lot of them are endowed with talents. But if you watch really, there is not innovation centers, establishment of innovation centers where we can develop those youth, the creativity or the talent, natural talents given to them. You know, Africa, we need to develop our indigenous knowledge system. So when we establish the innovation centers, engaging the youth to tap their gift of nature, the talents given to them in science and technology, I think it will help a lot. So as we are brainstorming on the needs of the youth, I think the establishment of innovation centers so that the youth talents, we can use that center as a talent hub of the youth so that Africa will become independent in our creativity so that we can formulate things ourselves, create things ourselves, and become independent so that we can be dependent on the Western world in importing. There are a whole lot of, like Uganda recently, I think somebody invented, I think, electric car, which that thing can be developed and transferred to other parts of the continent for the youth to have access to employable skills. So I just want to chip in this for the records that youth innovation centers is very important for African countries so that we can harness our human capitals, especially the youth. A lot.
Thank you so much, Joe. And this is very important element. And innovation is one of the very fresh perspectives that youth can add to the table. So as we're taking the next two speakers, you may also want to comment on the capacity building function as part of this can be also related to the youth engagement, and this can be also related to the technology transfer and innovation, and being independent of knowledge and being able in a place to to analyze and understand the outcomes. So Onia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, let me start by saying we're talking about innovation technology, and I think the basic for this has to do with a science-oriented background. And one of the science core subjects is mathematics. So because we need to know, and this project is not just about now, we're talking about in future terms. So I think we need to encourage science subject from the basic. And I must tell you, the science curriculums in Africa make it so difficult for people to lose interest in subjects like maths and the science subjects. So we need to go beyond just we need to start from empowering the teachers, especially those in the local communities. We need to carry them along. So there should be more capacity buildings on teachers, making the subjects easy and let students find it interesting. Like I'm a teacher, I have an academics where we bridge the gap in quality educations. Now, let me give you an example and let me be fast about it. In my country, that's in Africa, there's a certain exams you must write before going to universities. And at the other side, people who are ready enough, they take their children to good schools, they organize different classes. Now, leaving behind like 60% who don't have access to quality education, then you discover at that point that most students drop out of the educations. Why? Because they find it difficult to pass their exams, especially in science subject. So since we are talking about innovation and technology, I think there should be more investment on STEM. Yes, on STEM, most especially people in the local doing like we organize free classes for them. And that the record this year was good. We're able to help like 100 students who on their own will not pass the exam, but they're able to pass the exam. And once they pass their exams, they go into the science related course. So innovation will comes in. Because we can't start talking about innovations when hello?
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off, but I think
Yeah.
we're all in the view of the importance of incorporating innovation and having the capacity of this. And there are a lot of good practices and examples, but just to keep it, aligned with what we're doing, if you can see a room of improvement of the language that we can better highlight innovation, please scroll this document. It's in the chat, and add a comment where you can see it. There's a place for more development and improvement. Sorry to cut you off. I'll have to move forward and take Samuel. And
Okay, no problem.
just a general remark, let's focus more in the language. And I know there are a lot of rationale and a lot of reasoning and best practices. This what we would be keen to find them in the comments of this document. Thank you
Okay,
so
it's
much.
fine.
Samuel.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you, Asil. So I think on the document that you are currently sharing the screen right now, I think I already participated in the Zoom meeting that talked about this, even CYMG. Well, just to add, actually, I think what we are offering on the table is pretty much aligned with our interests, but it's just like I wanna ensure that during the process later on the meeting that you guys will have in Geneva, how do we bring this to the negotiation? I reckon that we already provide a written submission also about this. I think it is already good. But it's just like I think we need to try to seek also different alternative on how to bring this kind of a youth subcommittee to the institutional arrangement of this science policy panel. If you can scroll down a bit, sorry, Asil. Yes. So I think regarding the composition, I think I have no comment. On the mandate, I think I also have no comment. But on the tax, so I think the current draft, I reckon that the current draft that talks about engaging scientific community is not contended or is not debated by the member states. How do I know that? Because there's no brackets there, meaning that nobody really suggests any more addition to the particular part. So I think we need to also emphasize the talks about scientific, bringing youth-led scientific findings and innovation from the young professional researcher community. I think that could be also included as one of the tasks. So assist in monitoring, evaluation, reassessment of policies, and bringing and tabling scientific evidence that are gathered from youth-led initiative, youth-led activities. I think that is also important to be included in the tasks. So we can put this as a clear language there. And second of all, I want to talk about the observer status. Sorry, I want to talk about the observer status. I want to reflect on the draft compilation proposal and the draft ROP also. I think in here they put it very general to the point. It's too vague for me. I don't know, for me to understand. But it's just like I want to understand more on for example, the children and youth major group, aside we are being able to observe in the plenary, aside from being admitted to the process as an observer, I think do we have any further arrangement that allows us to contribute substantially in the policy committee as well? So aside from the interdisciplinary, sorry, not the policy committee, sorry. Let me check. Not the policy committee, apologies. I misstated the wrong article. Sorry, in the decision making, you know?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, because policy is governmental council, I believe. So the policy committee should not be should not also include it because it's like fully government. I get it, but it's just like I want to know you aside from suggesting and written submission, are we expecting any some sort of at the very least will there be any, for example, if the science policy panel already established and has their own finding draft, for example, are we being consulted upon? Is there any formal mechanism on that?
Yeah.
How? Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Thank you. So, first of all, commenting on the first, I think the notes are being captured, and that's good. We'll get back to them. But commenting on the tasks of the proposed expert group, but I'll very quickly. So, in the contribution of the work program, it's also some sort of kind of generic in terms of supporting research, assessments, horizon scanning, and all functions. So this is one way we envision that. And in terms of bringing the youth-led scientists, scientific results, and everything, this is actually in the mandate. So we didn't specify in the tasks that we will the future group should bring the youth perspective, because the group is actually mandated to bring the voices and the need and perspectives and outcomes, etc. So this is one point. The second aspect is in terms of the ways that we can find the youth engaged in the future panel. One way is this group. The second way is to ensure that interdisciplinary expert committee that is already part of the institutional arrangement will have a youth seat on it. The third is we proposed in fellows in one of the rules when it comes to the very specific rules and responsibilities for the assessments. One of the function will be providing scientific assessments and producing reports, and then there's already a draft rules and procedures for these assessments, and there is a terms of reference briefly for lead authors, contributing, review, and we are now proposing fellows, that fellows will join the assessments and will, bring the youth perspectives. As what we have been discussing in previously and this morning is that we are also demanding a consultative process to finalize the stakeholder engagement, and through that we would then make sure that the youth are incorporated and perspective are added. I hope this answers the questions, and we can reflect more on it. But the thing for the week is that what we're doing is trying to, see how far we can go with these proposals. Some of them are quite kind of, ambitious, but hopefully we will see how far we can push. If there's any.
Sorry, one more thing before I forgot this point. So as we know on the draft compilation, there's a chapter, no, there's a section called strategic partnership. They also mentioned, aside from building partnership with the other MEAs, regional entities, funding agencies, they also include other selected relevant stakeholders. So can they also, collaborate with a youth-led entity in this strategic partnership arrangement that they already put in the draft compilation? Thank you.
That's for sure. We can ask for that because it's not yet adopted, it's not yet finalized. So
I realize it's bracketed, but yeah,
it's not bracketed. The reason why, because it's we haven't discussed it in the previous way. So there was no much discussion on this detailed of future arrangements. Rather, most of the focus were in the one we have the bracketed. So they will be visiting these aspects. So we might have more brackets coming in. But the thing is, I wouldn't say it's already adopted or completed, or we won't touch on it, but it will be some arrangements in the future related work program matters. So if we can come up with a textual proposal and language, then feel free to add it, and then we will reflect on it and make sure that it will be delivered. This is the whole idea of holding such discussion and preparatory meeting. Okay, the in-person delegates are still doing their breakouts. We were supposed to stop by 12:30, but you might come now, but we can take 1 or 2 more reflection. 50.
Thank you, Asil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So just want to have questions actually for us to reflect. The first one, because in the regional meeting, Saudi Arabia is really against for the precautionary approach in the operational principles. Just wondering if what we are proposing in the conflict of interest will be kind of similar for the term of precautionary approach. Just want to have these reflections because I just afraid if it like kind of similar term that they will propose on that, and they will oppose on that. And then the second one, if later I mean like the discussion for the youth advisory expert committee is not concluding into that term, so I think we can try to refer to the OEWG second report, which they use the term multidisciplinary youth expert. So I think it also provides us more wider engagement if it's that we aim to. So it's not only limited to advisory group. That will be another suggestions. But again, I'm like this will depend on how the in-person and then the online participants agree on. And then the latest one about the strategic partnership, if I recall during the meeting, they are not limiting who will be the partner actually, but they just, I think it was asked by China, and then the secretariat tried to clarify that the partnership can also extend to in which what like depends on the SPP needs. So I think that will be our possibility to also try to recall again our role as the example if we are incorporated as the expert group, youth expert group. So we can try to propose to have this collaboration to the youth constituency also. So those are my points, Asil. Thank you.
And yeah, sorry, just jumping a bit. Yeah, I agree. I think as I mentioned earlier, the strategic partnership part can be also another entry point for the youth expert community that we are trying as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Asil, you are still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Test 3, 2, 1. Test. Felt like I'm gonna sing. All right. Okay. So thank you everyone for the discussion. We are now reconvening with both in-person and online participants to have a quick wrap up and kind of to finalize the discussion that we have been doing. So first, I would like to ask the in-person delegates to report back on the discussion, and then I will be adding some of the highlights that we did online, and then we can finalize and call it up for today.
Okay, so for the in-person breakout session, we received some updates from the CONG representatives who attended the regional preparatory meetings. Henrietta provided some updates from the preparatory meeting from the African group. So from the African group, a lot of discussion had taken place, a lot of interest in capacity building, so that took up most of the chunk of time, and in capacity building there was
Let's have 15 minutes.
so
Like
there's proposals 1 and 2 that are currently in the text, and Switzerland had proposed a bridging third option. We could not find that text word by word in their submission, but we have it on our notes, so you can access it there. We also found out that there are some countries who are not, there are many countries who are not in favor of intergenerational equity because they feel the concept is covered by human rights approach and gender responsive approach and other related concepts. And so COIMG did a bit of bilaterals and meetings with some of the member states to try to convince them, to try to explain how intergenerational equity was different and distinct from the other principles that are already in the text, and to help them see how it can benefit both member states and COIMG included in the text. The Africa group is also not at all in favor of the policy committee. So we just had a bit of discussions about what had happened in this regional group and what our approach might be. And I think we agreed that in terms of intergenerational equity, we would, well, one, we need to figure out what approach we're taking, what definition we're going to be presenting to member states if they don't necessarily understand what intergenerational equity means. And then the approach would be to help them to see what the benefits of including this text would be to the member states themselves. So not just COIMG. Yes, the African group is not in favor of the policy committee because the policy committee would give a lot of control to the member states in terms of policy prescriptions. In terms of the Asia Pacific meeting, so we got some updates from Petria. So again, main discussion was around capacity building. Some states not in favor of the precautionary approach. And the Asia Pacific region was in favor of using language from Resolution 5/8. So not changing it so much, and in favor of consensus-based decision making. Yes. In terms of capacity building, we also had a discussion where some of our representatives who were present here asking what COIMG stance was on proposals 1 or 2. And so what we discussed was generally we have a text ready, so we have text that we're ready to recommend, but if it comes to choosing between 1 or 2, that would be proposal 1. But I think we need to look at the new proposal by Switzerland.
All right, thank you so much. And very briefly on the online breakout discussions. So we also touched on the capacity building function and the intergenerational equity incorporation and the youth inclusion in the SPP. So one of the points that were highlighted is that the intergenerational equity is, we're also talking about the definition and that it's a notion that views the human community and the importance of whatever we're doing now will be passed from generation to generation, whether it's knowledge, impact, or policy intervention. So was very important to stress on the intergenerational equity incorporation. So we've got some points to also reflect on the finalized way to move forward in requesting the incorporation. What we have now in the text and the compilation of proposals is that intergenerational equity is one of 3 streamlined proposals for under the operating principles. So most likely, most of the views would be like leaning towards having a broader notion or provision from human rights approach or human rights principle. So what we presented and suggested in the submission is to incorporate it with also gender equality. So it can be equity and equality can somehow be, there's a place to make sure that it is incorporated, or rather to be a standalone operating principle with all the rationale and the points that we have been raising. We had some comments in the Youth Expert Advisory Group and the Strategic Partnership. So for the Strategic Partnership, there were the discussion that the existing text
does not limit, and there is a way that we may consider pushing for inclusion of the youth inclusion and the strategic partnership, youth inclusion in terms of youth-led entities, in terms of youth scientific individuals, experts, and etc. There were also some discussion on the incorporation of youth that are part of the industry and whether they can work as a mediator with the industry and how can they be part. And then that was also reflected on the conflict of interest aspects and how can we consider the youth engagement in these elements. We talked about the possible ways to incorporate youth in the future SPP. That could be one of them, the expert advisory group, inclusion in the interdisciplinary expert committee, having a fellowship program, and also making sure the outreach and capacity building are incorporated among youth, and also youth are also part of the process. Yeah, that is most of the points that we discussed. I just wanted to reflect something on the capacity building and CYMG position. So in the written submission and as an outcome of the virtual roundtables, we came up with some sort of textual proposal to somehow be in between and not really like going with one or two, because we're not stuck either to support this or that, but perhaps we might also consider intervening and proposing the proposal that we have, and also consider other proposals that will come along for sure during the contact group. I think that wraps the discussion in the work. Perhaps more work is needed and more arrangement would be considered when it comes to the contact group, division of work and intervention finalization. Just a quick reminder, if you're not in the WhatsApp group yet, please let us know to be added and get the youth priorities. Yes. So the WhatsApp group is only for those who are present in Geneva. For those who are online, keep an eye in the mailing list and in this coordination document, the central document, because everything will be linked to this link. You'll find all the folders. So now moving forward to the very last point, and very briefly, I'll give the floor to Zuhair and to finalize a very quick, kind of exchange of views on future engagement, rather beyond the plenary and the establishment of SPP, and in youth engagement options. So,
are we on the slide?
Yes, we are.
Can you turn to that page? Please, that's him. Samuel, we can see you.
He doesn't.
Hi. Yeah.
Is it not presented? Okay, so we're going to have a power chat for online and in-person participants. Every participant will be given 30 seconds only whenever he or she requests for the floor, because now we are rounding up the WEG process and we are heading to the panel, and hopefully the next session will be the intergovernmental meeting back to back with the first session of the panel. So we also need to discuss a bit about how we are envisioning engaging young people in that process. As you know, that for the intergovernmental processes, there's a requirement which is called the admission as observers. And so far in the document prepared by the UNEP, what we can see that it's most likely to happen that the organizations accredited to UNEP and the chemicals and waste related conventions will be given the priority to engage as a stakeholder in the future panel, because that's something happens to the IPCC when these accredited organizations that request to be admitted as observer to a panel, they don't need to submit a lot of additional documents. And organizations who perhaps don't fall under these categories of participation, they would probably submit additional documents for the admission as observers to the panel. That's what I can see from the proposal made.
But rather as observers to the panel, right?
Yeah.
Not as panel members.
Yeah.
So that UNEP and other familiar MEAs that
Yeah.
you just listed would kind of receive hopefully an automated
Yeah.
accreditation.
Yeah.
/ then easing, make the registration easier. But then anybody who's not accredited to any of
Yeah.
those partners would have to go through some
Additional.
sort of an additional accreditation.
Yes, that also happens to the IPCC
Yeah.
as well, and that's legitimate to prove that they are working on that particular subject matter of the panel. It's also so that's why we will have youth organizations, obviously, from different processes, from UNIA, from this MEAs, perhaps WHO as well, if WHO is a co-host or co-manager of the secretariat. So that's one option could be. So maybe we can also discuss a bit how we want to engage young people as observers in the future panel. For the UNIA, as you know, that we have the children and youth major group who incorporates all the accredited organizations and also expert youths or non-accredited youths who are not perhaps coming from the accredited organizations. The major groups serve as an umbrella platform for all accredited and non-accredited, respecting their interest to engage in the process. How we are thinking of engaging in the future science policy panel, because a lot of young experts, scientists, and are also young youth with a lot of lived experience might not be able to come through an accredited organizations, because for getting an accreditation, you need to submit a lot of legal documents in different countries. Young people cannot register a non-profit organization or non-governmental organizations. Differs from country to country. In the global south, it's even more difficult. So the floor is open, but how to moderate the online one? So anybody, just to share thoughts, you have to do in 30 seconds. Which model we are going to follow, or any proposal you have? Any hand raised from the floor or from online? Is anybody speaking? Shah, please unmute yourself and speak up.
Okay. Well, basically, in line to what you just. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Wait. We're not hearing the online participant.
Am I audible?
Please wait for a moment.
Hello. Am I
You're setting
audible?
this up. Maybe some technical glitches.
Can you repeat the question for us?
Okay, the question is.
Who is it?
Am I audible?
Mensha, you are audible in the Zoom, but I think the in-person people are still fixing their audio system.
The first one, I think. No, she's unmute.
And she's trying to speak.
Yeah. Can you speak now, Mensha?
Am I audible?
She's speaking, but
We don't hear. Yeah.
oh, we don't.
Maybe it's
The system is on. See, it's X.
Am I audible?
It's muted.
Okay.
Oh.
Am I audible?
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're audible now.
You need to put the mic.
Okay. I just wanted to comment in what you just said the last time. I think the only way to get young people on board who find it difficult registering NGOs, non-government organization, is by cooperation, incorporating young minds. If young people that have skills, that have ideas that are innovative, but find it difficult to get NGOs registered in order to actively participate, I think the only way to get them working is actually by incorporating them using existing NGOs. With existing NGOs, they can be incorporated as an affiliate unit or a section of any NGO that is registered, operational, that is also working. So that way you don't deprive them the right to actively bring to the table what they have and to see how innovative they are. So if you use that constraint, it definitely makes it difficult for them to even do anything. But if we can use the system of incorporating young people into such working systems, then it becomes easier. So when they get to that level, when they can register an NGO, independently participate as partners, then it becomes more easier. So, but for the start,
thank you,
it's more good
Mention.
to use the system
I'll
of
just cut you
partnership.
off there because we have to keep the intervention limited to 30 seconds for each as we are running out of time. But I understand that you. Hello.
Sorry.
I hope it's. Okay, so can anybody from the online just do a mic testing? Samuel, are you there to do the mic testing?
Hello, check.
Yeah,
Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Yeah, it's done. Yeah, we can hear you now, loud and clear. Yeah. So I got that mentioned about like supporting individuals who are not perhaps coming from the accredited organizations through the accredited organizations, but it only happens where if there's a constituency or constituency based of engagement, like all the organizations under a constituency, then it happens. Other than that, individual organizations, they're not bound to, or they are not, I mean, there's obviously, I mean, why would they share if there is no such network or group of youth? So that's one thing. Obviously, we should follow the constituency-based engagement, drawing upon similar experience or similar practice from the IPBES, where there is two networks / forums for stakeholders. One is for the indigenous people; they have their own forum, and they get them identified as a critical stakeholder in the IPBES process. Another one is like broader civil society, which also includes youth. That's called OneNet. ONET for the IPBES. So like this, we can also have a youth forum for all the youth individuals and organizations who are interested to participate in the future science policy panel on chemicals and waste pollution, that we also discussed during the intersessional period in the virtual roundtables, how we want to organize them. So the proposal is like, okay, I will open the floor for comments, quick comments from all of you. As we are just running out of time, I'm just making the proposal that we receive the comments from our constituents, is that to have a youth science policy forum. This forum is not an event, this forum is a body, or you can just try to name it differently, Youth Science Policy Forum on Chemicals Waste Pollution. And this will be a group of youth individuals and group of youth organizations accredited to the future panel. And youth observers will engage through this forum, like they engage in the IPBES process through the Indigenous Peoples Forum and through the ONET, which is the civil society network. So this is the proposal that we can make so far. Now, obviously, in the coming days, we will have more clarity after we reach to the end of the OEWG-3, how the organizations will be assembled in the future panel. But any comment on this? Quick comment, but keep it like 30 seconds. Yep.
Okay, my comment is.
You can take a mic. Steven.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my comment is, since my prediction is the science and technology is the stakeholder group that might be more receptible to the member states to be prioritized, I think we should build connection with them. Yeah, that's my comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Here in the back.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's the back.
Yes, Sifa.
No, it's what we gave them. It's not working.
I have a question, Zuhair.
Yeah, please, Samuel, go ahead, and then we give this mic to. Yeah.
is this science policy youth forum will be coordinated by the CYMG as the lead, or is this a group of coalition like what we have on GYCPP? Thank you.
Okay, we can respond, but Prishila has a.
All right, so this is just a comment to what you said, that indeed we do have a lot of youth groups that are even affiliated with the PHO and the like. So when we come to the PHA, we see IFMSA, we see IPSF, I think IDSA, and so many others. So I think, and basically all these groups exist in all countries around the world. So I think that's a very valid approach to go about involving the youth in this future, science panel.
I think it's a great discussion to start thinking about youth engagement, but still it's too early. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the Youth Consultative Meeting, we'll first need to push for the stakeholder engagement mechanism to be open for public consultation, so that we as civil society can contribute to the discussions and propose options for engaging with us as children and youth. So you can start thinking about how you would like to be engaged in the science policy panel, and later on, when the panel will be established, we'll push for the public consultation so that we can openly contribute and co-design the engagement mechanism.
I just saw a question in the chat saying if this forum will be open for observers only or non-observers as well. So when we started with the constituency-based engagement is providing a space for also non-observer. This is what we've been saying with our constituency to UNEP. But yeah, as previous speakers highlighted, that perhaps it's quite early in the process, and this will be later on beyond the discussing the preparation of the establishment. But the main points would be here is that while we thinking about the strategic partnership and the strategic engagement, we should also make sure that the youth component and inclusion are granted by the proposal, which will be later on kind of the mandate giving for the future SPP. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you for all the views. Okay, I think I need to take another 3-4 minutes. Just responding to the question of Samuel, I think it's the right time to have a discussion on this, because if it's open for the public consultation and then observers / stakeholders or major groups ask for opinions or suggestions, to make suggestions for the future panel, I think it will help us, the discussion happening here will help us to make a very concrete proposal at the time. We don't have to start from the scratch. For 2 reasons. One is that, okay, just drawing upon the, just responding to the question of Samuel. It's a very valid question, whether the forum will be managed by the children with major group or not, or whether it will be a coalition. So for instance, having a coalition is a problem that there is no specific rules that coalition will follow. And it becomes a very vague space, and there is no rules for making decisions. For instance, in the constituency, CYMG, we have a first we try to reach to consensus. If it's not reached to consensus, we try to reach to majority. So we know the decision making. But if a coalition, then it completely based on the consensus that happens to the GYCPP. And if a single partner is not willing to, is trying to block something, then it's completely blocked. So that's one thing. So there's a value of getting this managed by CYMG, and also that CYMG being the constituency to the highest decision-making body, which is on environment, which is UNIA, and also this panel's work will also influence other environmental negotiations, including the processes that CYMG follows, which is UNIA, Montreal Protocol, and other environmental processes. So I believe it's a good idea to have this forum managed by CYMG, because we have a structured process and procedure, which is a charter. We have structured working group, which will be able to serve the future any youth forum or network need for the panel. And we also have youth experts here and online joining with the experience of doing things. But yeah, Samuel, any follow-up question?
No, I think it's already clear enough. So we know who coordinated this establishment process. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think in future we'll have such meetings in future. So to have your ideas and comments, how this future youth engagement will be managed. Thank you. We are closing the discussion now. I wish we could have more time to have a bit of debate or discussion on this, but now I'm handing over the mic to Asil.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's very great and interesting discussion, and we will definitely keep it up. But for the sake of time, and as we only have 30 minutes break, and then we reconvene back for a major group preparatory meeting. Let's take a group photo between in person and online. So perhaps if we can stand there, behind the chair, and then the online participants, if you can open up your camera, we are going to take the photo in 1 minute. So please, we are arranging ourselves, and then you can open up the camera for the photo.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how can we? Yeah.
Option click and then like gallery view.
You stop there. Stop there. Yeah. Yes, Samuel, we can see you.
Need to do gallery.
For the rest,
Yeah.
guys, for those who are joining online and want to join the online photo, the group photo, you can open up your camera if you're in a position to do so. We're gonna take the photo in few seconds because we need to close. So far, I can only see Samuel. I don't know if the rest are.
Yeah,
open.
yeah.
At least we can see the photo.
Photo time.
Alrighty, Patricia is here. Good. Okay, guys, quick. Alrighty, people are coming.
Yeah. Fitria.
No, I'm old.
No, you're not old.
You're not old.
Guys, open up your camera. You want to be seen.
Then we can wait. We can put the background, and then they will still be there. Give me a second. They will be still visible. They will be still visible.
No, they're not visible.
I will switch. Yes. Okay. All right.
That person, like a lady.
What's switching?
Okay, guys.
Let's do it.
0.5, huh?
Good.
You think so? Okay. I think I got you over there.
Are we done taking the online picture?
Yes. Thank you.
One more.
But this is just
Are you taking another one?
yes, I can.
Let me take and you come.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, this
Maybe.
one.
Maybe after that you can join in.
Yeah. I'm coming back.
Let's do something fun.
Yeah. Pose.
Yeah, I thought it was something fun.
Maybe 3.
We can
Wait.
edit them.
3, 4 point.
Yeah, we're 3, right?
I mean, this is also environment E.
Yeah.
That the Union president discovered.
Yeah.
Okay, I did.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Hello, are we still taking the picture?
So much I need to be done.
We are done.
It's already done.
Yeah, Samuel did.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Forever.
Have a great rest of your day, and we will keep engaged with the files online.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.